Hey, this one's for you, Trent.
Yeah.
Still better than Bim.
Here we go again. Same old stuff again. Episode 41, MEP Innovations. That was legit. We sit down with Stacy Zerr, the supreme ruler of the MCAA Technology Committee, to talk about the MEP Innovations Conference. What we liked, what we didn't, what we'd like to see in the future. The Dorks hit the field down a player, but we feel Stacy did a great job keeping us on our game with another fun and interesting conversation. Had a few shout outs to our friends and some hecklers in the chat along the way. Man, I love doing this podcast. Thanks for listening.
Nerd! And we're live. Episode 41, MEP Innovations. That was legit. That's right. We're going to cover what I think is just, I'm going to go ahead and say it, our favorite technology event of the year.
Yeah, definitely.
And it just grew. It added on. It got a few new heads to it this year. You know, it used to be called MCAA Tech, but has now morphed into the MEP Innovations Conference. Because we brought together SMACNA, NICA, and MCAA. And when I say we, I actually mean Stacy Zerr that's joining us today. Say hi, Stacy.
Hello, greetings. I am not going to take credit for it, but I am glad that the three organizations finally got their acts together and started working together. So it's been a long time coming, and I think it was great they finally did it. So
yeah, and I would say it's not the first year of it. I keep saying that, but it's the first year that it was live. Yeah, because we did it. It was done last year, but it was done virtually last year, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was good to be back in person, though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We were just talking though. I think that we need to get into better conference shape before we go after something like that.
Give a public service announcement there, Travis. Public service announcement number 1. What are the steps that you should take to get into conference shape?
Well, I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, it's all the things you shouldn't do, right? Have a few cocktails each night.
Yep.
Go to bed maybe an hour later than you normally would. Get up another 45 minutes. Make sure you set an alarm for every hour and a half because you're probably not going to sleep great in the hotel room. I mean, you gotta put in the training, right? If you're going to do this right, you got to put in the training.
An hour later than usual, Travis.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing, right? You plan to go to bed an hour later, but then you think about Jake Olson and it turns into 4 hours later.
All bad decisions start with Jake Olson. That's for a long time. Jake Olson. No.
Oh, that and come on, we got to give a shout out to my favorite, Just One More, Josh Bone.
Just one more.
I cannot tell you how many times no. Just one more. Just one more. Yeah.
One more, Josh.
Just one more, Josh, baby. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's it. I'll hear that in the morning.
Right.
Did you get just one more, Josh? I did. When did that end? 2.
I have to imagine that the vendors and stuff, though, had all this money in reserves from not having in-person conferences for 2 years, and they blew it all at the conference.
I think so. Right?
There was a lot of alcohol and a lot of
awesome food too. Yeah. It was nice.
Well, and I want to give Sean and the associations credit when we go down to plan that as committees, they take that into account. They want to make sure that there are places for the vendors to take people and activities and everything like that, because we talk about all the time when we do this podcast, like the conference is important. Some of that stuff is importanter.
Yeah. Oh, it's the absolute connections that you make outside of the sessions that are really the key, right? Mm-hmm. It's when you get back and you can say, oh, hey, I talked to this guy at the conference, and you have their phone number and you call them, and I think that's always the big thing. So I agree. It's one of those necessary evils. I'm an introvert, and like going out at night is hard for me. It is like the last thing I want to do, but I always know that that's part of it. I gotta do it. It's part of the assignment. So we do it.
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I win.
You can go, Jeff.
I was going to say that because it's I bet you, Stacy, if you didn't have to interact all day and then go out from the introverted side, it's having to be out all day doing the conferencey thing and then somehow recharge and go back out. Do you have any tips for anybody listening, for our introverts out there? Because it is important. I mean, it's when a lot of the aha moments happen, is what I'll call them.
Come on, let's be honest. Like, of the people who attend that conference, 70 to 80% are in that boat, right?
Yes. Yeah. Seriously.
I think it's just, I don't know that there's any tips, because I don't like missing the sessions. I thought the sessions were great. And so it's really hard. I actually really liked the Family Feud session. And not because I lost, because I have no idea how hard that was for me. I hate losing. But I just felt like it was a good, lighthearted thing that everybody could do and have fun. I actually think that probably helped a ton before the event on Tuesday night.
Yeah. I will say too that we all have been professional conference goers, and I am not always a fan of forced fun. And this wasn't so much forced fun. Like, I've been to places that do like speed networking and everything like that, where they kind of require everybody, and that I don't like. But of all the quote unquote forced fun or conference fun activities, that it was good. It was fun. Everybody laughed. They let their hair down. Some things that were, I don't want to say inappropriate, but somewhat questionable were allowed to happen and talked about. So it was fun.
Well, for everybody listening that didn't get to go, the previously aforementioned All Problems Start With, Jake Olson, and the team at Dado put together a wonderful Family Feud that pitted some of our favorite people in a industry style Family Feud with, we have the Tin Knockers, the Sparkies.
Yep. Plumbers and the bullshit artists.
Yes.
The talking heads.
Yeah.
Talking heads. I think we were talking
bullshit heads.
We were in bullshit artists.
Bullshit artists.
Yeah.
And for those that couldn't figure out, well, Jonathan and I were on the bullshit artists.
Shit artists.
Yeah. I got put on we just weren't fast enough with the buzzer. I mean, you guys were just like all over the buzzer, because I think we went down to you guys first, but I don't like to lose. Some of those answers were, come on.
I do have to ask, was that session recorded? Because I wasn't a participant, and I'm sitting off to the side and I'm watching scorekeeping, starting to scratch my head a little bit. I think that,
oh my gosh,
I think there may have been some inconsistencies with the scorekeeping. I don't want to put anything out there as any sort of conspiracy, but I will say there may have been some inconsistencies.
I want to redo.
You want a rematch next time?
We can do another.
So you can do like a Wheel of Fortune or something.
Right.
Oh, that'd be good too.
That'd be fun. It'd be fun.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun though, and everybody really had a good time with it. So I don't think the electricians are ever going to live down some of their answers, but it was a good time. And I just, it's the lighthearted piece, is the ability to poke fun at ourselves and at the trades. I think that was really good, and it was a great opportunity to like get all the trades together and get people talking, and that's one of the huge advantages to having everybody together.
I'll echo that. If we're talking like plus delta, I think that that was one of the big pluses, especially, like you said, Jeff, we had done it online before, but I don't think SMACNA and NICA kind of understood the kind of culture the MCAA has put together over in the last 7 years of, we're gonna
hamburger you.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
We're gonna tell you what's working. We're going to tell you what's not, and we're going to tell you where we've been dumbasses, and we're going to poke fun at ourselves. And I think that actually facilitates the sharing and the learning quite a bit.
Alcohol helps too.
Yeah, alcohol
is very helpful when it comes to the sharing and the learning. And
speaking of, we haven't introduced our drinks. Does anybody have a drink? We just kind of jumped right in.
Oh, I do. I had a day that started off with my daughter texting me before I was out of my bed going, I've lost my Spotify account. I think somebody hacked it. Can you fix this for me? And then I was like, sure. In 15 minutes, 2 seconds later, well, I'm kind of on the way to the bus. And then 2 seconds later, and so on. That was like an hour ordeal. like resetting the Spotify. And then I went in and dealt with programmers and everything. And while my programmers are awesome, I had a rough day. So I went with Delwhinnie. That light's horrible on that. Delwhinnie is a Highland Scotch, and it is sweet and it is awesome. And I swear I will not drink too much. Like, I mean, that bottle had been drinking on before tonight.
Okay.
Just saying.
Okay. It wasn't just popped.
It wasn't just popped. And I actually have my MCA.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Matches your vest there, Stacy,
Yeah.
from the last event.
Last year.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm teetotaling again because I have to go coach basketball after this. So, Jonathan, these guys in our Slack channel got to see, I sent a picture of my brain, or otherwise known as the SCOBY. This is my first sip of my kombucha I made. I made it a little different this time. I used mole's asses and honey, and then did a little secondary ferment with some ginger. It's actually pretty good. So, be watching for that in the mail, Jonathan. You'll get a new SCOBY here soon.
Yep.
Yes, Darren, mole's asses. That's what we say in my family. We don't say molasses.
Actually, he posts a Ziploc bag with a giant goober in it. That is the SCOBY, or the mother. It's like this giant mold, basically, that you grow in the tea to make kombucha. And I've been without one for like almost 3 years. It's been a long time.
One thing I've
So
done, and this is a total pivot here, but if you haven't tried it yet, take some of the kombucha when it's done, throw it in with I've used white flour because it ferments better, and you can get a good sourdough starter out of it.
Oh, cool. That was a big deal during the beginning of COVID. Everybody did sourdoughs.
All right.
Did
Sorry
you?
about that.
I see that you were at work, Stacy. So I'm assuming that you're not drinking this evening, or you're hiding your drink.
I'm not at work. Not because I'm not at work. Let's be clear. I mean, I don't think you could go to an office around here when there isn't something hiding in a cabinet. We all have something hiding in a cabinet. But yeah, I just chose not to tonight. So
this job just got real. Put it down.
Well, and you can always tell at the end of the day when you walk around and somebody's got like a little cup or something. You're like, what's going on today? You know? So, but I mean, it's construction. Doesn't everybody have something stashed in their drawer?
Yeah, I think you're required to.
When I moved to my own office, when it was just me, I have like an entire little bar set up off to the side. We're literally like 4 different bottles of bourbon and scotch, and then some miscellaneous.
I always kind of thought that, obviously there were some bad things that happened in offices back in the 60s, but some things about the Mad Men whole setup were right. Like the dry bar in your office. I don't see a problem. And a couch. I mean, sometimes you need a nap.
Yeah.
And a drink. For that nap. I mean, after I've had a good drink, I have a good nap. Well, I'm teetotaling with y'all today. I got my Polar Black Cherry today. But that's because mom and dad left town this morning. So dad and I went out last night and had a few of those old fashions and kicked back. And, it's always a bummer when the parents leave. So it was a good night. So I'm on the recovery boot today.
Well, go ahead, Jonathan.
I was going to say, Stacy, I have to say, I totally agree. Like 70% of the people that go to this are introverts, and we're asking a good number of them to go way outside what they're comfortable with. And I think that's why there is that mentality of, we're going to make sure there's some beers for you after this, and some food and some time to break off into small little groups and talk to each other. Cause it is, I can remember the first couple I went to being completely worn out by the second night. And certainly when you get off stage after talking to a bunch of people, I literally go and hide. Like, it's like I get off stage and I go hide somewhere for about 20 minutes, and then I come back and I'm good, because there's a lot of prep that goes into that. And it takes a lot of gas, you know what I mean, to do those events.
I do think that was one thing that I was actually, this conference is very heavily reliant on the members to present and to host and to do all the stuff, right? And I know I was in that boat. I'm sure you guys are in the same boat. I found I was doing so many of the sessions that I didn't get to participate in as many sessions as I wanted to. And so that was probably my takeaway, is to like limit my participation so that I can actually go and like listen and partake. Now the videos came out this week though. So I've
Yeah.
actually been going back and watching the stuff that I was really disappointed that I missed. So that's actually been really, really nice to have those videos this week. But that would probably be one of my plus deltas, as Travis mentioned earlier, that I think that we should consider for the next time around, is like what should be different. And I think not having people so involved would be good. And I think part of the reason they did it is everybody was afraid that people wouldn't show up because they couldn't.
Mhm.
And so I know they were trying to get some duplication. So maybe hopefully that won't be an issue.
Well, I
next
think
year.
we did a good job of casting a broad net when we were doing the sessions, but at the same time, we pretty much only took from, I don't want to say only our innovation committees, but I think when I looked around at the different speakers, like most of them were part of one of the 3 committees. We brought some other people and they did some individual sessions, but I echo your point. I think that I didn't get around to as many ones as I wanted to. I was really, I missed the roundtables, but I also heard that they didn't go that well, that it was hard to kind of get conversations going. I didn't get to see any of that.
The
It
roundtables,
depended.
yeah, the ones that I was involved with became more like panels than they were like roundtables.
Okay.
Although the panels I really liked, me, Jeff, and Darren's in the audience. We did a panel together that I thought was fantastic. It was a lot of fun, and I think we hit on a lot of the important points of. We were doing waterfall versus agile planning and kind of how to think about that and get them. And Jeff's going to dance again. Jeff was dancing for anybody listening.
And they hate it because it was, the title was "Don't Go Chasing Waterfall."
Yeah,
Right,
well,
right.
yeah.
Well, you know,
We put a little.
you
for
try to get
left eye.
punny. You try to get punny.
I got to say, the one thing that I thought maybe was missing that's been at some of the other ones is the contractor journey stories. I really like those, and I've seen some that are just fantastic, where it's just like Chris did a wonderful one a couple years back where it was just talking about the journey of going through this particular project where they were trying out a new technology. And those implementation stories, I think, carry a lot of weight and usually carry a lot of good lessons in the form of, like Travis said, horrible mistakes or things that went wrong, more than anything else. It's like, oh, here's how we messed this up. Please don't do this again.
Right.
But I would love to see more of that next time. I know that again, like everybody said, we're kind of working against that. Who's going to show up? How much can you rely on everybody to show up? I didn't even know, what was it, the last week coming into it, there was, at least 10 cancellations of critical people, which was a little bit of a Chinese fire drill, Well,
and there was a couple sessions too where it was like they had 2 different speakers scheduled, but they were almost like kind of disjointed. It was like they're both could have been phenomenal sessions all on their own and almost needed more time for each person. But I understand that they had to in case they had to bail out. But I did participate in several of the roundtable discussions. I think I had 2 of them that I was co-hosting. I think Darren and I actually did one of them together. And it was a little bit of a struggle because we had 3 people in each one, and it was kind of hard just to get the flow and like make it really cohesive. So I felt like, again, I think if you had 1 or 2 people, that would be better. And especially 1 or 2 people who knew each other, because it was a little hard working with like somebody completely new who'd never been to a conference. So
I also think the MCA got to the point where like a lot of the roundtables were like little workshops, and they could get away with that because you're on your 3rd or 4th conference where you guys always talk about this, and you can get away with doing a workshop kind of right in the middle of everything and not be disruptive and get still like a lot of participation. I had Doug in a workshop and he was amazing. He was like his own little presentation. Doug's just says like, Doug, I don't even need to be here. I'm just going to let you run this whole thing because you're better at this than me.
It's interesting to your point, because I had a couple panels that I sat in on that turned into more like roundtables, because the panelists, and I was a participant or a speaker in one of them, because the 3 of us, it was Jared and Matt Lamb from Rosenton, and we just kind of riffed off each other for whatever 25 minutes, and then it turned into a really big discussion. But I also saw other panels that were more like you were saying with the roundtables, where it was almost like taking a 45 minute presentation and given each person 15 minutes. Like there could have been more time. They could have been a presentation on their own. It was kind of an interesting mix. And it, we're, like you said, we're trying to cover any gaps with people fall out and getting people to work together that haven't before.
Well, and then like some of the roundtables, like people would show up, but they would scatter. And we live in a time now when saying, hey, go sit next to somebody is not really very acceptable. Some people aren't comfortable or whatever. So those did turn into more panel discussions. But I went to one, it was estimating VDC hours, and that one was packed house. And so they actually were able to break it out and do roundtable discussions. And that one was actually really good. I don't remember who was in charge of that one.
Estimating is usually Pikey, isn't it?
It might have
could
been,
be, but that might have been
from them, their organization, I think. But
was Trent up there for that one too? Because I think that was one he filled in on.
Chris Weaver. I think it was Chris Weaver.
Oh, Chris Weaver, right on.
I think Chris was in there. That was a good one though. I enjoyed that one, and but Casey from JH Kelly had some really awesome feedback on how they do things. So that's one that could be a whole session. I would love to have somebody stand up and talk about how they do it, especially if they're not doing it by percentage of field or shop hours, So
yeah, I felt the same way. Like I actually talked to Casey a long time on the last night, and that's a really well matured company that has a lot of sort of to pass on to other people, like a lot to learn from there.
Yeah. Well, we're really blessed in this industry that there's a lot of really great people to learn from that are really, really open to sharing, and that is the culture I think the MCA has fostered for so long, because it's not just this conference, right? You go to the main conference, you go to any of the PM education stuff, and it is all about contractors sharing best practices and sharing and trying to make the industry better. And that's one of the things I love about the MCA and why I like participating in it.
For sure.
And the more you share, the more you get shared with, and you can climb that way. Like the first couple classes that I taught, I ended up getting so much feedback that first I thought what I taught was probably wrong based on all the feedback. But you're learning, somebody comes up and says, oh, we don't do it that way and we do it this way. And it was though, I do think there was more tension at this one with all of the different sort of trades there represented, not just because maybe they were worried about sharing, but because there is a little bit of a disconnect between how we do things in between sheet metal, electrical, and plumbing. That's just enough to make you wonder whether what you're about to share is something that's valid for that other trade. I was really hoping, and one of the things that didn't happen for me, unfortunately, because I was like you, Stacy, I was running from class to class to class, is to sit down with some sheet metal people and really talk deeply about sheet metal, because I'm trying to do things in that area outside of this, and every time I sit down and talk to them, I get a little bigger piece of how they do things. We're on the electrical side. I have Jared, who's like, he'll fire hose you with awesome information for hours on end. We've had him on the show. He is wonderful at it. And he understands just enough about what we do on the plumbing and mechanical side to kind of adapt what he's saying to what to how we would understand it. But so what was like, I think we've talked a little bit about our takeaways on some of the other shows. What was your biggest takeaway? What did you take back that you thought was most important? And I know that's a horrible question.
It's a big ask.
Yeah, that's a really horrible question. Because I'm in a different position than some people might be, but I attended the NECA. I don't know what his title is. Is it Ron Bailey? I really should have looked up names before I came on. He's with NECA, and he did a presentation on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I actually really took a lot out of that session, just because it's something that's I'm passionate about. And he spoke a lot about not just DEI stuff, but like it's not just enough to include people. People want to feel like they belong. And that was the quote that I took out of there. And so I've actually been bringing that back to our organization and being like, how do we make people feel like they belong? Not just that they're included, but that they belong here and we need them. So that is not a tech thing at all, but that I thought was a really interesting session. Tech wise, actually, I think Travis, you guys and had teamed up with Pointer and did a presentation on like sheet metal workflow in the shop.
Yeah. Yep.
That was a great presentation too.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, Scott Hoffman's our sheet metal superintendent there in the shop, and he's been doing it for a long time. And Pointer, I mean, I didn't realize how big they are. They are a massive organization. So they brought a lot of heat with that too. So I thought that was a really good one too.
Yeah, they had a great one. You know, I kept seeing over and over again, things kept going back to workflows, which and popped up in several of the presentation. Like we mapped out our workflow and then we did this. And so I thought that those are also really good takeaways. You know, how do you train somebody? Like I think Rod did this, not this year, but last year, like how do you train somebody on how to map your workflow? And I still think that would be a valid one to do again.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it is so hard. It sounds like it's like the easiest thing in the world. And then you get people in a room and everybody's arguing over, and you have to like, at some point you have to go, wait a second, there needs to be a break in the process here. Like we've been working on implementing, like, how do we track materials and like what containers they go into and stuff like that. I know Travis is probably in the same boat. And we had to like break the incoming from the outgoing, because trying to like flow the process through stuff that comes in and then stuff that goes out, like it got too convoluted. So we had to be like, no, we're going to put a hard line in between the two. Mm-hmm. So seeing how people have workflowed their process and stuff was really interesting. I think that is a big thing that we all need to get better at, and at all levels and throughout processes. And, you know, I think it was Trent's session, right? You got to figure out what you need before you go out and buy software to try to fix a process that's broken.
Yeah. And a lot of people go out and buy software looking for solutions when they don't even know what are the jobs we want to do with this? How do we want to actually use it? I had a conversation earlier yesterday, actually, with about Cache Valley and a guy named James, and he was at this, and they have a really cool, because I do a lot with process with people. They bring their process down to the person on the floor, along with a whiteboard, along with some goals, and really use that sort of last planner mentality within their fab shop. And I got somebody who was just singing me the praises of it. So next time you see James at Cache Valley, you need to hit him up on workflow creation, because their company seems to have a good culture for that, for sure.
Well, and there was definitely, if you watched, I think it was Joe from Pointer, right? He was talking about they had hired an intern, and they set an intern on like doing the spaghetti diagram, like following the parts through his shop and like drawing the squiggly lines, and how they had determined that there was some massive workflow where the guy was walking like 20,000 steps a day, and they relocated equipment so that his work, and at first he was really against it and upset with them, and he came back to him later on and he was like, that was the best thing ever. My back doesn't hurt at night. Exactly. I'm not exhausted. And I'm like, gosh, you know, we love interns here. I love interns. I love college students. They bring some fresh enthusiasm, and it is a lot of work having an intern, don't get me wrong. But I was like, man, that'd be a cool process to like send an intern out to the shop for 2 weeks and be like, okay, you're going to start with a piece of material and you're going to flow it around the shop. You're going to time it. You're going to,
okay, here's your iPhone. Here's your Fitbit. Here's your
I was going to say,
and go. And then here's your coupon for mental health later.
I know.
That person's like, they just made me it's like they're all crazy. They went in circles in different places and they made me draw it. It's like, yeah, we know. That's all right.
Cool. I can't wait till they have a tracker that we're okay to put on parts that's granular enough that we can literally put it on a couple T's, a couple elbows in our shop, like put it on some different things and just watch it go through the shop. Just like you said, and not have to send the intern, but just be able to get nice coordinated maps of how everything is moving. Because I think that's going to frighten a lot of people after they see it, when they realize just how crazy some of that gets.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. We need to do that though, because we spend days and hours planning these shop flow plans and building it out. But then once it's kind of set in place, I don't think we do a good job of go back and checking and doing those spaghetti diagrams to make sure that what we had in theorized is actually in practice.
I mean, technically, Jonathan, I'm going to go off the chain just because I'm looking at the camera behind you. Can't we use cameras and machine vision to figure some of that out without having to actually tag the damn stuff anymore? I mean, isn't that sort of possible? Or
Yeah.
am I
yeah.
going too far?
No, Wynomia can do that. And Wynomia has some extra trackers in case you don't have the cameras, and they have the database in the cloud and everything else. I think that you get a lot of pushback when you start to throw cameras out in the fab shop, say we're tracking stuff.
Especially,
Right.
yeah, the union people get really sensitive about that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
But
trades
I mean, I
people.
guess you could. I mean, I know that the union labor and that there's certain things you can and can't do due to the contractual labor negotiations and the labor contracts. But I feel like you could build that into the somewhere, and like we don't look at people. We're looking at
I mean,
materials
even the latest Google Pixel has like a selfie mode that will remove people in the background. We could have probably attempt to apply, we'll use computer vision to remove people and then only track pipe, right? Or duct.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Me and Jeff were arguing about this at one point, and I really think it's a culture thing. I think you can get a culture built where it's okay. Where you've convinced people that your goal is to have an efficient shop that works for them, and they can let down their guard enough to do some of those things that are considered questionable now.
I agree with you. It's not just cameras, man. It's like everything. I had a discussion earlier today with somebody who had the same. It was like, I see what you're saying, but this is like a cultural shift. How do you do that? I mean, if you have that in your magic bag of tricks, and I was like, that's tough. I get it. Like changing culture, that's a hard one, but
that could be a great session.
It could be.
Yeah,
it could be
really
a great
could.
session.
Change
Really good.
culture.
Yeah.
Changing culture. How do you do it?
you're not going to find anybody that wants to present on it.
Everybody's going to want to attend.
Exactly.
I'll do it. They can just throw stones at me. I'll just do a panel or something. It would be interesting too, Jonathan and Stacy, if we could find somebody who's had some of that cultural shift where now they invite it. And then we get them to talk about what you said, Jonathan, that journey. There's got to be a pitfall in there where, I go back to my original days at Gallegos, and I don't think they're going to listen to this, so I'm just going to say it. Like, I brought in some technology and said, whatever you do, don't use the stick, use the carrot.
I can see that.
What's the first thing they did?
Stick.
Yeah.
Stick and bricks.
Stick. And then what happened? Those things got pulled out of the OBD ports and chucked. It was like,
So we tried to do this is tech implementation gone wrong, right? we have a time tracking application system that we use to do our payroll integration. Great system. It works fine. And we were going to implement it in the shop, and it was through facial recognition. So you would walk up, it would recognize your face. You would touch what job you're working on. It knew what cost code you needed to charge to, right? And holy cow, the pushback that we got was crazy. I mean, people were growing out beards to try to, and it didn't matter. But they were like, if they walked away, they flipped the camera up. So the camera was looking up at the ceiling. They were absolutely convinced that we were tracking them all, watching them all day. And it's like, dude, I don't got time to sit here at a web camera and watch you. But that change can be really hard to overcome.
I do have so I had a Brianna over at Milwaukee. We had Brianne, sorry. We had a discussion that was actually pretty good about this, because she's dealt with 3 different manufacturing companies that do lean, and then that do lean culture, and really had some great insight on building lean culture. So I think rather than getting a contractor, we might want to lean on somebody in manufacturing or somebody like that who's doesn't have skin in the game from our standpoint.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I was thinking that when we were talking about the culture thing, is it might be good to look outside for somebody that's successfully already done it.
Yeah. And manufacturing really does sort of bleed that as a culture, attempts to. So we could probably get stories of how this was done bad and how this was done well from them.
That would be that could even be a great main session, right?
Yeah.
Culture and how to change culture, have that open culture in your organization. That would be really cool.
So I'm nominating Milwaukee to put that one on. They had like 2 people that I wanted to talk to about that. So that's a good one.
I actually probably would be a great one for them. I really think we talked some about, I don't remember if it was you and I, Travis, or somebody and I crossed paths, and we were like, man, there was a lot of great presentation on what we did, but it was that how, that nuts and bolts,
Mhm.
how did they do it, that sometimes that we want to dig into. And so that's one of the things that I wish we could, and maybe I think that may have been time. Again, I think with the split sessions, that might be tough because to get in and actually explain like how something physically worked or what challenges you encountered and how you overcame them, that can take some time. But those are like the things that I want to know, right? How did you do that? How did you figure that out?
Right.
That'd be
Sean
cool
just
for a
did an awesome one in the
pre-conference.
comments. He said,
Yeah.
how do you keep that going when somebody leaves? And that's happening a lot where these people that are sort of your rock stars of this, that, and the other are taking off, or moving to that other company. And how do you keep the culture that made them successful going in your business? That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Stacy,
who
to
will
your
talk
point,
about that.
the one you're talking about would be a great pre-conference, longer session, like a 2
Yes.
hour,
Right.
2.5 hour. Like, this is how we did it. I really think, given I did the tech implementation, like the secrets of a con tech ahead, where we gave away a lot of those things that we learned throughout the days of consulting and sort of trying to give people a path. And what I learned coming out of that was it would be cooler in some respects to have a practitioner who's been through it in a team and just do exactly what you're talking about. This is what we were doing, but this is how we did it. And here's where it went wrong too, and how we adjusted. And even I know sometimes it's taboo, but bringing in the vendor that was part of it to be like, and this is how we adapted. And this is what, this is how we all achieved it. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, I think definitely that real, how did we do it? Just that's where I learned so much, that's where I'm just like, oh crap, that's how they got around that obstacle, and
or when they go into that detail, that's when you start getting the real pointed questions. And when those questions come up in the overview, but you don't get to ask them as deep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I sat in on one session that was about data across tech stacks or something like that, and it was super high level, and I was just like, man, I wanted to get into nuts and bolts.
Right. Yeah.
And
that was the comment coming back from a lot of things, is that we stayed high level and there was a lot of desire to get into the nuts and bolts, which means longer sessions probably.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't take a lot longer though. I think we're at 45-minute sessions. I think an hour-long sessions, sometimes you can get that little bit extra. But again, though, I think a lot of our challenges this year, which were all COVID related, were that trying to split it so that if we had somebody disappear, and I think we still had a few sessions where like we had a couple prisoners that all disappeared and we had to.
Yeah. I think you can do it in a shorter session. I know, again, from my experience as a speaker, if I'm given 45 minutes, I'm talking 25 max. So that leaves us 20 minutes to do that deeper dive where hopefully the audience is interested enough by what I've presented. I've teased the nuts and bolts a little bit, and then it brings out those deeper questions where we can have more of a conversation. But that is not a presentation style everybody has either.
Right.
It'd be cool too to see like people that attended sessions and then took something home and then tried it and came back and told us, like, hey, like Jonathan, I'm just thinking about ours. I'm like, I would love to, because we saw a lot of people nodding their heads in that room. And I think we sparked, you always have the choir that you're preaching to that already gets it, that just wants to hear it. And then you have a couple in the room who all of a sudden go like, hey, wait a second. I think I want to do that. And they'll come like ask you a question or reach out. I'd love to see those people come back. That's how we kind of grow new presenters, right? Is have them come back. And the other one, I'm putting out my plus deltas, but I'm going to, instead of a plus delta, it's going to be like what I hope happens. I hope now that we were in person, I don't think this could happen virtually. So it's not a knock on anything, but I hope next year there's a few people who met at this cross, mechanical, electrical, plumber, sheet metal, cross trade that actually want to come back and present together.
Yeah.
Like I hope we created some bonds that, because I think that Stacy, the culture you talk about when it comes to the MCAA, it wasn't an accident, but it didn't happen overnight either. And I remember being introduced to it with James. It's funny. It was Kelly Doyle and James threw us into an MCAA Tech years ago to run a roundtable on ERPs. And
exciting.
Oh, it was enthralling. It was riveting. Well, no, here's the funny part. Kelly and I did all this work to get ready, right? Like we were super prepared. We said like hello and we were done. They talked. We did not bomb Sean McGuire. We did not bomb. They all talked. We just went back and forth and let them talk. And all of a sudden I was introduced to this culture that had been created and sucked into it and realized, oh, wait a minute, this works completely different. And so I think it progressed over time. And I hope that that's what the in-person MEP innovations do. So, if you met somebody there and you're listening into us, like reach out ahead of time and, whether it's Stacy or Sean or Josh or Tahira or whomever you get in touch with them and say, hey, we've got these ideas. So that's my what I want to see evolve from this thing. And that
in reality,
across all of us,
because most of us, well, I would say the majority of us perform at least one trade for the most part, or we do multiple. But the reality is at that conference, there are probably people that are working on the same projects, right?
Yeah.
That they would know each other. And they could actually maybe do some sort of joint implementation or joint case study on something they've learned about.
Multi-trade racks. I'm always
multi-trade
racks, right? But there's got to be a great example of contractors that are working together on a project that made it work.
You know what? Jared and Doug from DSI are doing multi-trade racks together.
Oh, there you go.
They're close enough.
Modular.
So big,
you hear that, Sean?
Big State and DSI doing a multi-trade rack. And I don't know if you saw it over at DeWalt, but DeWalt had a little multi-trade rack out there. That was Binsky in Big State. So, we have some examples of that. It would be interesting for some of them to get up and talk about what that takes. Because there was definitely even with the little one that they did with Binsky and Big State, they actually did companion racks. So they're designing two racks that are companions of one another rather than in the same shop. So you have two racks that bolt together rather than a single rack that holds everything. So you get a little bit of an advantage there. And it would be interesting though to see. They're going to build a pretty decent job, I think, together. And they're both of them, Doug and Jared, are not little. They're perfectly willing to talk about what they're doing.
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is something we've talked about for a long time, but you don't see very many people doing it really successfully. And I'm going to admit, we just bombed one, and we were doing the piping and the sheet metal. We got everything to fit on the rack. We had to order the VAV boxes with bottom access, right? Guess what? PM didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
Even though they were sitting in on the coordination meeting, they didn't get the memo, right? So the damn boxes were ordered without the bottom access. So then we had to flip boxes, which meant the piping was all wrong. I mean, comedy of errors, detailing costs are over, fields pissed off. I mean, the whole 9 yards, right? And I'm just like, God, why can't we get this right? And that's why I'm always, I can stand up and tell you what not to do.
That's almost more important. Yeah. My first exposure to that though was a fab convention at Mechanical Inc. Right? You had a multi-trade rack sitting in the middle of your fab shop. And I walked over and I said, is this efficient? Is this effective? And he goes, I think it's a break even. He says, I think it's a different way to do it, but for this first job, because it was just the first job. And it might even been the first part of that, because I just think it was just a break even on this part. And that's the scary part, is with something that complex, you're going to have to do it 3 times before you get it right.
And that's what I tried to tell the team. I was like, hey man, you got to understand, we can't expect this to be super efficient on go one. There's going to be so many lessons learned. The first time we did hanger fab, it's horrible. Threw half of them in the trash, right? And now we can't imagine not doing that. And I think that's where you're hoping that maybe by going to conferences like this and sharing pains, that maybe you don't have to experience all of it yourself, that maybe you can learn from somebody else's mistakes, problems, challenges.
Well, I'm going to take a diversion here because I have 2 questions. First one, in your opinion, why wasn't I named Innovator of the Year? And secondly, from Sean McGuire, how would you feel about a VDC shop tour, like a fab shop tour at DSI next year? Spoiler alert, the conference is in Austin.
Is it back in Austin? Are we for sure it's in Austin?
It's what Sean's saying.
Okay. I thought there was some question over whether or not it was in Austin. You just got to announce it to everybody in the world.
I know. Yeah.
So,
Innovator of the Year next year.
I know. I don't know that I have the answer to that one. I think you have to put on a 2.5 hour session before the beginning of the conference.
Gotcha. That's what it was.
That's probably the key there, right?
Hard pass.
Yeah, exactly. I always say they're got to be sick and tired of hearing from me at some point, right? And like, you're probably in the same boat.
Yeah.
I remember Travis, like the first time I met Travis, he was like on stage at Autodesk University. He was like rock star, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flash
Back in the rock star days.
Weightlifting unicorns.
Right.
That's all I can
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
It's weightlifting unicorns, man.
That was awesome.
And VDC shop tour, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, like, what do you think you'd see, Travis? What do you think you'd learn?
I think it'd be just like any of us when we went out and visited your office for that Stratus thing. Like you're walking around, you're seeing what kind of what machines are you working on? Let me see all the plugins that you're running. How do you handle the submittal process? How are you tracking all that information? I think that it probably would get to that nuts and bolts level of detail that is deeper than you get in a presentation.
Yeah.
The things that people don't think to talk about that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Where one of our peer group members, they when you walk around their offices, they have big pictures up. This is did we do this on your project? And it's like samples of really cool fabrication,
Mm-hmm.
right? And are we doing this on your job, or this saved X hours on this job, or why are we doing it on yours? And I thought that was really cool because it kind of creates that mindset of thinking about fabrication and how are you going to apply it on your project. And they didn't think about bringing that up. I can't remember. We did walk around their VDC area and I took all kinds of pictures, and they're like, why are you taking pictures of that? And I'm like, because it's really cool.
Right.
They had a sheet about like how to load a truck and like considerations for fabrication for loading a flatbed semi. So I guess there's probably things that we all do that we don't even think are that cool, that somebody walking through might go, oh wow, that's really
I'm trying
cool.
to remember. It's been several years since I've been through Doug's, but I mean, at that point in time, what blew me away is it was massive, because I think at that time he had 90 detailers under. They were spread out more, so they weren't all in Austin, but just trying to, like we talk about a lot in construction, just trying to coordinate all of that, all the people on all their jobs doing all that.
Yeah. It's crazy. Steve Whitmer with the ACCO people, the pack, that is truly herding cats, man. He's got that idea of the project manager as his own little unit all over the place, and then him running VDC for all of them. With every time I want to talk to somebody about how to sort of manage like little cell groups, I go straight to him, man, because he's got it down, and he does it like in a really relaxed way. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, I think we're bad with like 3 branch construction offices that have their own fab shops and have their own standards, but I can't even imagine. I've heard him tell stories. I'm like, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like running a million offices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be. What are you guys looking forward to seeing next year? What do you want to see?
This is something I've thought a lot, and it could be a challenge, because we've already grown the conference so much, and we've done this in the past where we've invited in even more perspectives, usually in like a pre-conference day, or we've done it with the tech committee, like getting some GCs, getting some architects and engineers in there. I think that it's really important that we focus on our work, but we don't forget what the other externalities that we have to deal with. So I don't know if there's an elegant way to include that, and we obviously can't invite in the AGC, right? I mean, we can't have we're just trying to be like an Autodesk or something like that. But I think that there could be some clever ways to include some of those other perspectives while improving what we currently do internally. Yeah.
It could be really interesting though to have a GC present on like, what do they expect from a best in class
Yeah.
subcontractor from a technology coordination perspective.
So I would have to agree with you. And in fact, I saw Alex Belkoffer do this. I was actually got to be the moderator for a panel with a couple of really good, with him acting as the GC, but some really good design build partner trades, and talk through how they do it and the problems that arise, and then let the questions fly. And it was a lot of fun. That would be really cool to see.
Well, did Con go back to a general contractor?
Rick?
Ricardo.
Yeah.
He's at Structure Tone at STO.
He might be perfect for that type of a talk. I'm actually with Jeff Elwell. I would love to see more on data collection and more sensors, because that's how we're going to be running a lot of what we're going to do. And then I don't know how we include more of that hardware piece, because right now we're kind of, we have the hardware that's really established in contracting, but haven't stepped out into that. Do we get some manufacturers to come in here and talk about manufacturing 4.0 and some of the sensors and some of the robotics that they're using to drive their fab? Because they're definitely, they're doing less prototype making, but they are using a lot of tricks that we're not using yet. Not that we're not using a lot of tricks, because we're impressive to them from what I've seen, but it would be nice to see that, and to really see how good data collection could get. Even though we still should probably hire an intern to follow around a part.
Exactly.
No. I was just thinking about this. What if we could find a sponsor, Sean? I'm giving this one out to you, that we hand out some sort of data collection devices that in the, when you get your welcome bag, or maybe it goes in your badge, and we see the people's movement, somehow collect the data throughout the conference, and then do something with it, like some sort of, I don't know if it's a hackathon type deal with it or what, but it would just be really cool for us to see something like that happen.
That'd be awesome. Autodesk did that with LPRs, license plate readers, and RFID.
Yeah.
They handed that out one year and had license plate readers at all of the different classes. So everybody knew, they knew how many people went to each session. They know how many people went to each this and that. And it wasn't keyed for you. It was just a general data collection. That'd be interesting. That'd be really interesting.
I would love to see how people are collecting data, though, what data they're collecting, and then how they're applying it for analytics to the organization, right?
Yeah.
And that's like the holy grail to me that I don't think we've done very well in construction. Can we take photogrammetry and get percentage complete? How do we do it? How do we apply it to our billing? How do we apply it to percent complete? How do we use it to predict where we're at on projects and when we're in trouble? The holy grail is figuring out when we're in trouble, early on a project.
Early indicators is the holy grail of it all, right? But the predictive data analytics that can tell us something's going to go wrong before it's going to go wrong, or when a number of certain factors happen that problem is very likely to happen, and we can look at it. That is that's the connection to data that we really haven't seen. That'd be cool to see somebody connecting that together and showing how they do it.
Yeah, labor, there was an interesting pre-session from Labor Chart, where they talked about creating your labor curve and then comparing and then monitoring your labor curve. I thought that one was interesting. I don't think it's quite there, because your labor curve could look okay, but if your percent complete wasn't, I think that it was missing that piece, but that one was really interesting. And I thought that one had some merit. I was trying to figure out how do you take that and really apply it across your organization, but I think data analytics is a big piece that would deserve some coverage at the show for sure. How people are doing it and how they're using it. I know there's some super smart people, probably like Darren out there, who are doing things.
Well, Nika has somebody on their staff, right? Amanda. That's what she was doing, right? She was doing a bunch of the data analytics and
so we were doing a flow chart similar to what we have for MCA with her. And I was like, I need to get out a poll to figure out what are the different names of the different titles of people within these companies. She says, you don't need any of that. She says, I can just tell you. And she said, and I'm looking for a sample of 100. She's like, No, I have everybody's title. I can correlate those together and tell you all the positions that exist, and every time I talk to her about something, that's her response. We've had her on the show and she was similar. I think what Stacy did though, when she watched that other presentation, is why people that are doing data need to be presenters, because she instantly found a problem in the question they were asking. And that's when I was working with a company consulting, they said, BIM is definitely wrong for construction. It's bad for construction. And I was standing there going, I don't think you're right. And they started to talk about the data they had collected. And I'm like, yeah, you're asking entirely the wrong questions. And you're probably asking the wrong people too. But I think that idea of like, if you're up there presenting your data, we could give you a little reality check on the questions you're asking. Because that was your first inclination, was to look at that curve and go, well, it's kind of missing this piece,
Yeah.
Right.
It was interesting though. I mean, there's a part of me that was like, oh man, they've got a good point there. It would eventually indicate there was an issue. I don't know how early, if it would indicate it early enough.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of things that we're always trying to figure out, right? How can we use what we have? How can we, there's cool tech out there, and I always talk about the fact that there's the theoretical BIM, there's a theoretical tech, right? There's no offense, talking heads, but there's the people out there talking about it. And then there's the people actually getting it done.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I like listening to Benham talk, because he's always got that futuristic mindset, but there's always a piece of me that's like, is anybody really doing that yet? And so hearing the contractors talk and how they're actually doing stuff, I love that stuff. People who have real world experience, who have bled from their mistakes. Those are the kind of people that I love listening to at the conferences.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
But we love you guys too. And I know you guys are a little different. You guys are in the, getting beat up and bruised up too. So
what I thought, with what you guys are saying about the predictive analytics, as I go from company to company and talk to them, the funny part is the MCA top tier of contractors are looking at predicting the future, and everybody below them is really lucky if they can tell you what they did in the past. Like their ability to have historic records, even to look back at, not look forward, but even look back at any level is so lacking. One of the,
it's horrible.
I've had a dream for a long time of being able to go back through all of the documentation in a contractor and build back out the numbers you need to do the predictive analytics, because it's tough to look through all that data. And it's always in weird formats, and there's some products out there trying to do it, but it's a challenge.
Wasn't there some program out there at some point, correct me if I'm wrong here, that was, you were supposed to take all of your old 2D plans and run it through it, and it was going to give you your predictive DNA on your plans? I want to say Brett Young, if you're listening, that was you.
I think it might have been Brett. Yeah.
I think it might have been
Wasn't
Brett.
that based on ceiling space or something, like how much ceiling volume you had?
No, that was the one he was doing with Sean at MSurf, I think, where it was the 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag all the time.
Yeah.
And understanding that color coding when you were putting too much stuff in, drawing too much stuff in between the ceilings, sort of like the beginning of some sort of predictive generative design around don't do that. But I want to believe it was somebody that was going to do that. That it was going to
right. I think it might have been
tell you
Brett
your
Young.
DNA.
Right.
It might have been Brett.
Yeah.
I heard the pitch. I just never saw the product. Yeah. So, but I thought I heard the pitch back when I was at HF Lens. So like back when I was an engineer, I think they wanted you to take all your designs and throw them in there and then have it predict hours for drafting and for engineering, and then also point out where you've made mistakes. But without contractors doing as-built models that you could compare that to, how would an engineer know if he made a mistake?
It's true. You don't, right?
You don't.
Yeah. They don't have, if you looked at engineering drawings for a year without looking at our drawings, I don't know that you'd learn all that much about what the building is actually getting built as.
Engineers don't like being told they're wrong.
No.
Yeah. I kept that part.
Comma PE. Stacy's got the PE behind it.
Oh, you got the PE? Oh, man. Right on.
Yeah. I understand that one. I always joke that I can say it because I live it, right?
Yeah.
So
That's it.
Can we
All
track
right,
their
well, we are-
non-mistakes? That might be a lower number. Nice, Sean.
I don't know that we're supposed to be reading Sean's
Oh,
comments
whoops.
live here.
We'll bleep that out.
Yeah, you get to that in production there. There,
Post We'll
Travis.
clean it up in post.
All right, so we've gone over a little bit of what we're looking forward to next year, a little bit of the ideas, but we want to wrap it up here quick. But I want to let you, Stacy, and maybe each of the peeps on here today kind of gives the people who listen, because at this group, what I've learned from the construction dorks, right, is we're really, I think, reaching out and connecting with people who do the work, just like you said, the people who are bleeding day to day, who are getting dirty hands, doing those kind of things. And some of them I don't think get to join us at these things, and there's some FOMO. What is the advice, Stacy? You're in a leadership role. What give them your like the elevator pitch they can use to their executives, to their leadership, to get time to come to an event like this? Because as we all know in this world, we're too busy bimming to do this kind of stuff sometimes.
yeah, that is actually a great question. And we also struggle as an organization because taking all of our tech people out at the same time is not feasible anymore. We've hit a point where it's not feasible to leave the office without somebody here to help, because if something goes wrong tech-wise, we took down the whole shop or 3 or 4 whole shops. So we're to a point where we can't do that. So that's a great question. I am the mean boss. I think I mentioned it when I was on stage, that when the people come back, they report back so that they can actually show what the value is to attending the conference, like what connections they made, what questions did they ask, what were their 3 primary takeaways. If you're not there if you haven't been before, that's a hard one to figure out. How do you tell, how do you make that pitch, I guess. But I guess we wouldn't keep doing it if that wasn't the case. I suppose I would reach out to one of your I call them friendlies, right? People who are in your same boat, and say, hey, what was your takeaway? What was your value?
Yeah. I mean, Travis, you go to a lot of these events, and I think it's built into Helm's DNA, but what would you arm people with?
Yeah, I think that, like you said, it's part of our DNA. We do, and to Stacy's point, we do sometimes, we have to be a little harder on and make sure they bring back something that comes out. So we do that. I would say one thing that we have struggled with a little bit is taking some people that should be exposed, especially from a technology standpoint, taking somebody that should be exposed to the technology and not sending them, but sending more VDC people. And it's not that the VDC people don't need the exposure, that everybody gets something out of it. With this last group, we got a lot of stuff out of it, but I think back to 2 years ago when we were in Tampa, right? That was Tampa again, I think. We took a bunch of PMs, and that was like some major aha moments. So I think that because it's in our DNA, it was one of the things that we talked about when I was hired on, that they wanted to have a presence at conferences. And then I've been kind of that evangelist to say, okay, this stuff is really good. If we want to really change the way that we're doing business, we got to send more people. But you do, to your point, Stacy, the friendlies, both inside and outside the organization, to get them to sell it for you.
Yeah, I like the idea too of having like a path, like for PMs. We've got some really, I'm going to call them younger PMs, but they're really not that young, but they're really progressive and they're really trying tech and they're leveraging it. And to be able to get them in a room with some other similar minded PMs, man, they could like really build each other up, right? That would be really amazing. I don't know how we do that, because I feel like right now most of our people are tech people. It would be awesome to have like a PM, some kind of PM track. That would be really kind of interesting.
I'll Sean, just for your edification, I will save the notes from the chat, and we will bring all of these with us to the next tech committee planning session, because you're throwing out a lot of really good stuff, and I don't want to just keep talking about it.
Yeah. Jonathan, you go from business to business. I'd be interested, because you get a purview into them.
I actually would say that if you're willing to hire a consultant like me, you should be going to these first, because much better than a consultant is a peer. Like if you go to these and build up a peer group, that is better than a consultant 9 times out of 10. And I know when I was at Spader, I had to do the same as what you're asking, Stacy. I would give a presentation on what we saw, and then I give you at least one thing that I'm going to implement before I go to the next one. And if I don't implement it before I go to the next one, you can have an argument with me, But I think that, and I get asked about consulting a lot while I'm at these things, and half the time I'm like, yeah, I could help you with that, but that guy over there is really, really good at it. And you don't need to pay him, because you guys can trade information and you can both grow from this relationship. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is the first major tech event we went to, Brant was at with Kyle Holmes, and he's like, come down and see us. And we came down and saw him. And in a 2-day trip, I changed my entire VDC department from something that was existing in my imagination to something that was structured around known successes. He had success. He knew how to do it. I didn't change everything I did, but I changed a lot. And I think you can have huge wins from this conferences, but most of those wins are about building peer group, about building relationships. And I think that's really valuable. And I think that's easy to show off with some successes.
Yeah. I like that you have a bat phone, and that bat phone's a lot easier if it's, a couple of really good people in your peer group that can answer that question, or they've bumped their head up against it. I know a lot of us do that.
I think that hopefully more construction company owners are starting to realize that there actually is value in sending people to make those connections. It's not all about what you get from the sessions. You can connect on LinkedIn, and I've done it plenty, sure, but it's not the same as a bunch of introverts sitting around a bar at night
trying to take over the world.
Exactly.
Sharing discussions of their forge and all their other hobbies. Exactly. I'm always jealous of all of Jonathan's hobbies.
The hobby group can turn into another group. I got another one for you though that I just was thinking while you guys were all going through that, because I'm stuck on the carrot and stick thing today. But what if instead, if you're listening out there, what if they put the carrot out? Like, you can go, but the carrot is if you go, you get to do something that you see there. Like, go there with a problem, find something and try it. Like, we're going to let you try it. But if you come back here and don't have anything to try, then we're not going to, then why would we send you again? But that seems to me like a loss that we sometimes people spend their time wandering around the entire event looking for their problems. And it's like, let's identify them before and go there and try to do it.
That's the big question, right? That's like, the whole, was it what was Trent's session?
Pre-rec yourself before you tech yourself.
Pre-rec yourself before you tech yourself, right? Like, you got to go and figure out what is your question. I was in software sales for a while, for those of you who've known me forever, right? And sometimes it amazed me at how many people we would go into where we were convincing them what their problem was versus them knowing what their problem was. And so I think, maybe as an internal, for us, maybe we have an internal contest on who do you submit your problem that you're going to go out there and try to solve when you're at the conference, for a bigger organization. Maybe that's a great idea.
I didn't even think of that. Like, a few people are going to go. And so you've got companies now that are listening that always go. Wouldn't it be cool? And we're always talking about, Jake's digital, the digital divide. Wouldn't it be cool to like somehow survey your field?
Yeah.
And say, like, what are the problems? You see us sending these people, and connect it, like, give us your problems, poll them. You'll probably find some trends and send your people out. And then when they come back, it could be like, hey, remember those things you told us? Like, here's some ideas, and here's some things we brought back from this show.
Well, that's Trent's whatsucksatyourcompany.com.
I love it. I could not get them to buy that into that.
No, I have to be a little more creative too when I want to implement that. It has to be a little more formal, but I love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a great one.
Awesome.
Whatsucksatyourcompany.com.
All right. Well, we are getting near that time. Stacy, any final words before we let you go? And thank you so much for joining us and doing all the work you do. I know it's a volunteer position when you're talking about going into this and building it. And so we super appreciate it. It's where us talking heads get to talk. So, without y'all, we're just talking to ourselves if you guys aren't putting these things together.
I'm a huge fan of the Dorkcast, so not saying that to butter you guys up, but I think I went up to one of you and said I can only look at your shoes while I was at the conference. But there was so much good energy that was coming out of the conference, and I just really wanted an opportunity to catch that and say, hey, what can we do better next year? So anybody who's listening to this podcast, reach out to me or any of you guys and let us know, because we get better when we get feedback. And so I am excited for next year to be even better, because I felt like this year was coming a little bit off. Like you said, we weren't in conference shape, so hopefully by the time next year rolls around, like this whole mess is behind us and we come out of here with just a phenomenal event. I'm a little scared at how big it might be, but let's make it competitive to see who can get in, let's make it where people have to register the first day it's open, but let's do that.
That's awesome. And
That's
hey,
awesome.
I think Dorks, I got an episode for us coming in, how to get into conference shape. We get some of our best conference goers.
Yeah.
We're always talking about,
this sounds like a short video.
We want our vendor friends.
Video training event.
Right.
We're always
with
wondering
the Rocky music.
How we get our vendor friends involved. We got
to bring Jake back then. I mean, he's the triathlete of conferences.
He's the Iron Man of conference. I'm the, they give me that guy.
Sean can attest to the fact that Jake Olson is the key.
Oh, that's awesome. So I think we'll have an episode on how just to get yourself in conference shape. Just saying, your company might not want to know some of the tricks we're going to give you, but we're going to go ahead and give them to you. And Stacy, thank you for joining us. Sean, thank you so much. I know you're on the side there, and I know you're fixing a faucet right now. So, you might know a few plumbers that could help you with that. Just saying. However, thanks for putting it together. Thanks to everybody who put the MEP Innovations together. It really is one of the highlights of the year. I'm excited for what we can do and what we will see next year. Jonathan, Travis, any last words before I roll us out of here?
No, just thanks, Stacy. It was a great event. Thanks for being involved in the committee with me and everything. It's been a blast.
I'm on the same thing. I'm just glad, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
I'm just happy to be here.
I'm just happy to be a talking head that gets allowed in the room. So I'm very much appreciate it. So thanks for tuning in. This has been episode 41, MEP Innovations. That was legit.
Yeah.
We were down in, as my wife calls it, Porpoise Crispy for the week.
Corpus Crispy?
It's hard to say Corpus Christi without screwing one of those up, so we just do them both.
I haven't been able to get on a decent vacation for a while. I got to do something here soon.
Because your boss is an asshole.
Yeah, he is.
He rides you
fucking
too hard.
workaholic.
He does.
Fucking workaholic bosses.
Yeah, it's like older,
we can
younger,
have
techno Jesus.
We can have a come to Jesus's.
Yes, come to Jesus's episode with Bob and Jeff.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we got you now.
The dulcet tones of Stacy Zerr.
Oh, your camera went nuts with that one. That was funny.
You have like
My
a Surface
camera.
or something? Does it autofocus?
Yeah, it's a stupid camera.
Technology.
I know, technology. It either works great or it kicks your ass. I don't know how to change it.
Don't worry, it's not going to take off.
Yeah,
It's a fad.
Like everything that I enjoyed about being a PM, I learned from Wendy Meeker. It was fun.
Wow.
The unenjoyable parts I learned from Foreman. And I don't know that I had ever sat down with Casey from Kelly. He's awesome. I loved him. We talked for like 2 hours.
Picture of him with his long hair.
I can only imagine, because basically we talked Metallica and music for like an hour and a half,
He showed me that one night. I was laughing so hard because I was like, wow, you would not expect that.
He's a fun
That-
dude.
I would say
did-
most of those honors people did really well.
I was a small town kid too, though, so I also played sports.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
I was the same way. I was 4 sports, choir, band, plays,
Yeah.
student
Oh my
body.
gosh.
Yeah, but I graduated with 42 other people, so it's like
we were
Oh jeez.
we had 58. Yeah, we
Yeah.
had 58. And
Oh,
the crazy
wow.
thing is we played 6-on-6 girls basketball.
really.
Yeah. And so in 6-on-6 girls basketball, you have the half line and there's 3 guards on one side and 3 forwards on the other side. And obviously the other team's the opposite way. So if you're a guard, you never shoot the ball. You don't cross the half line.
Oh wow.
And you only got 2 dribbles.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a fantastic fast-paced game, but nobody knows. If you're not from Iowa, you don't
You
know.
don't know
And
what
if
it
you
is.
Yeah, and if you're under the age of 40, you have no clue. My kids just think it's a racket. They think it's hilarious. It's one of those great, like get to know you facts. I played basketball for 3 years and never scored a single point.